And I know for me, it's all these months, all these hours of putting in, and I'm not going to quit. Obviously, I'm not going to quit now, but putting all this time in, I want to be in that moment as long as possible, but every second clicks away and it's almost over, but I want to be in it as long as possible because I've earned it. And I think that's the person who's doing the Ironman the first time. You've earned being here. You've earned this feeling that you can only experience while you're in it, and it's over, and it's like, and that's why people sign up the next day. It's like, crap, I want to feel this again. It's overwhelming to get here, but I love this feeling now. And a big welcome back to the Endurance Hour podcast. Back alongside Kona coach Wendy Mater, I'm Dave Erickson. This is episode 380. A week out for me, 10 days, but because I leave next week for Ironman Arizona. And there are lots of events that are going on. People are posting that they're still racing. I know people are still racing, but it's like, it's 30 degrees outside where I live right now. There's snow on the ground. There's ice. It was 20 degrees when I woke up this morning. I can't even think about other people in these warm environments, but they're out there. And I know in just a matter of a week, I'll be in Arizona. Wendy, before we get started, 31 miles, 7,000 feet of elevation gain. What are you doing? I thought this is your off season.
It is my off season. I'm doing some fun events. So I did recently do a 50K, and I had two intentions. Yeah. Number one was to run with a friend, and number two was to see the views. Yeah. Because it's just a beautiful area this time of year. And both of those didn't happen. So I was a little disappointed because there's no rhyme or reason, and I wouldn't have signed up for a 50K this time, 1 month after I just did Kona, but I did do it for those two reasons. And unfortunately, none of them happened, but I still was able to use my fitness and get through the event. The only thing that I was lacking was sport specificity because I haven't been doing that type of elevation on the trails. And it was just kind of another wake up call to let me know what my strengths and my weaknesses are. And, if I want to focus on that distance or not in the future.
Well, tell us where those views were that you're looking to achieve.
So I was in Sky Valley, Georgia, which is Rabun County. And I've been attracted to this race for years since I've moved to Georgia because I've just been following it. And again, the views just look amazing with the reds, the yellows, the greens, and I just wanted to be part of that. And then when my friend, and I don't know if I should say his name, but former Team Timex teammate asked me to do a ultra event with him. This is the one I suggested. And this was like 4 months ago when I was, really in the training and into being really fit and getting ready for Kona. I'm like, sure, why not? And, it was a little bit of a scramble after Kona to, get my mindset and kind of get some trail running legs back. But again, I'm doing it with a friend and I'm like, it's just, going to be kind of casual. Get him through his first 50K. That's fun. That was exciting to me. And he's injured right now, so he couldn't make it. And so I was a little competitive with myself more than I should have been because I didn't do sport specificity. I just used my strength and endurance to get with it. And I was a little bit just, more competitive because I was alone. And I ended up doing fairly well. I know I have room for improvement. So that actually gets me excited to want to start training again on the trails. Maybe not now at this moment in time, but definitely into the new year and into the 2023 season.
Well, looking at your T2 coach Wendy Instagram page and some of the pictures you posted, I'm curious what the vibe is in the air when you have all these people with reflective gear on, the headlamps as they're getting ready to take on these long distances on the trails. It must just kind of be an interesting vibe, just probably like when you're in transition before an Ironman.
A little bit. So because I'm consider myself a beginner, probably more intermediate trail runner now. I'm not a beginner, but I'm definitely not an advanced elite trail runner like I am a triathlete. Mm-hmm. I don't get the nerves that it's a different nervousness and a different excitement than I do for triathlon. We're not getting in the water. So that's to me really helpful. Even though swimming's a strength of mine, I never really look forward to getting in water. Generally it's on the cold side. And so it's more like the anticipation for me of getting my mind set on I'm about to do a marathon plus 5 miles,
Hmm.
or I'm about to do a 5 mile warm up and then a marathon. And so that's kind
Yeah.
of how I approached this 50K,
Yeah.
and getting my mindset on the elevation. I've done, trail races in the past with quite a bit of vertical, and but I've trained for that. Like that was in preparation. Like I knew ahead of time. I knew what my goals were. This one was a little different. So it's definitely very more casual. There's less people. We know we're all in it for the long haul. There's a very, in my mind, based on my experience, a very small group of the elite top three, top five in the men's and women's age group that are going for that podium spot.
Hmm.
And for the most part, it's a lot of, I think, athletes, runners running with their spouses and or friends. And so, I was out there alone quite a bit, but I was also passed, and I passed others. And I knew there were a couple, or they were like good friends doing this together. They were starting, and they're running the whole thing together. And I
Hmm.
haven't done that yet in trail racing. I'm always by myself. I usually don't know anyone. So for this particular event, I didn't know anyone. I
Hmm.
did meet people along the way, because after we did, about the first 8 miles, because it was generally 3 to 4 miles up, 3 to 4 miles down, 3 to 4 miles up, 3 to 4 miles down. You get to know people. Like I pass people on the uphill, and then they crush me on the downhill, and then we meet up at the aid station, and then I push past them on the uphill and they get me on the downhill. So you kind of get to know people's strengths and weaknesses, and you start chatting with them. I start listening to other conversations from other groups of, what races they've done, what their experience is. So there's a lot of, in my mind, chatting going on throughout the nature of the event, which is something you don't get in triathlon. And it's at such a much lower intensity. It's
Hmm.
definitely tough, high intensity as you're going uphill, but it's definitely the whole vibe is we're all in this together. We're all supporting each other. We're all just trying to get from point A to point B healthy and not get injured, and enjoy the views, enjoy the beauty of nature.
So it's a jog where you're actually having conversations. And is there a certain pace that it ends up being? Like we're talking about 11-minute pace, 10-minute pace, 12-minute pace.
For this particular event with elevation, it was about a 15-minute pace.
Okay.
And
Oh,
so,
on average. On average.
on average, after all is said
Yep.
and done, my, again, my Strava told me my run, my time being active was like 6 hours and 59 minutes, but my
Hmm.
overall time was 7.5.
Got it.
I didn't stop that much at the aid stations, but I do know some of the inclines were so steep.
Uh,
I'm sure my Garmin didn't think I was moving because I was going so
yeah.
slow. And
Yeah.
so there's definitely a little discrepancy in that metric data that's posted out there. But in the general, we're just, in my mind, maybe a little more competitive than others, because I personally get frustrated when I get passed by so many athletes on the descent. And then again, after the first 8 miles, I was reminded, oh, it's not a big deal. You're going to pass them on the ascent. We all have our strengths. We all have our weaknesses. And so it's always a learning opportunity, and it's always a challenge. And when you cross the finish line, it's always great, because you're just like, oh my gosh, this is what I just did. I did a
Yeah.
marathon plus 5 miles with 7,000 feet of elevation gain and loss.
With our huge focus on training plans through Training Peaks with triathletes in mind, where do ultra athletes and trail runners get their training plans? Because you're talking about preparing your body for the elevation gain or the downhill running or the overall strength and core. Where do people find these plans? And we haven't discussed, I don't know if there's a big enough audience to create a trail running plan for ultra runners.
Right. So great question. So when I did my first ultra back in 2011, I did a 50-mile race in Steamboat, Colorado. Same thing. I just done Ironman Lake Placid. 6 weeks later, after Ironman Lake Placid, I decided I'm going to jump into this 50-mile event because I knew the race director. So again, I had no sport specificity, no training at all on the trails at all. And I jump in this 50-mile race because you know what? I just did an Ironman. I'm thinking it's about 12, each about 12 hours. It's definitely not the same, especially with all the elevation gain and loss. And at that time, those early on years, I was searching for training plans and there was like nothing. Like I couldn't find books. That back then we used to go to the library and bookstores, and I just couldn't find anything. Now there are, if you just do a Google search, ultra 50K, 50-mile, 100-mile training plans, there are some generic ones online. The problem with the generic ones is they don't take into account the terrain that an athlete may be running on. They're more generic in the sense that they give you maybe a 12 to 16 week schedule of certain amount of mileage to target each day of the week. And the main thing for an ultra runner is doing like back-to-back long run days. So I'm going to use Ironman as an example. As an Ironman triathlete, your longest run is anywhere between maybe 16 and 22 miles, depending on your experience. Well, as an ultra runner training for a 50K, we're going to do 20 miles on Saturday and 10 miles on Sunday, or the same thing for a 50 miler. So we're doing 2 long runs 2 days in a row. So if I was training for a 50 miler, I would try to target, 20 miles on Saturday, 20 miles on Sunday. And so the key workouts are on the trails, and you're trying to get very specific terrain to the terrain that you're going to race on. And then during the week, some plans, again, those generic plans just give you mileage. Some of the generic plans will add some specificity, like today's your speed work, today's your tempo day, today's your recovery day, today's your long day. But there's not much out there. And one of my goals for 2022 is to actually create a 50K plan for you and I to discuss and post it on Training Peaks. And so I have 2 more months to get that done, less than 2 months to get that done. I still want to work on it because now that I have all this experience, I feel like I have the credibility as an experienced athlete as well as coach that I feel confident that I can put together a pretty good plan that we do coaching videos for. So the athlete understands the nature of the plan as well as just the nature of how important sports specific intensity and elevation is to trail running. You don't, when my second ultra, the next year in 2012, I still did too much running on the road, not enough trail running, not enough elevation. And again, it was just another learning experience. I attempted my first 100. I didn't finish it. Again, I just didn't do enough sport specificity. So the third year, 2013, I said, I want to finish this 100 in Steamboat. And I did do a lot more trail running for that race, and I finished. So it's definitely different type of thing to do. And I don't know if everyone out there knows, but Ironman, World Triathlon Corporation, recently, within the last year or two, purchased some, I think it's maybe the UTMB, which is the Ultra Running World Series events. They've purchased some events. And so Ironman is getting more involved in the ultra running community world.
Has anyone mentioned in your passing conversations of what they did to prepare for some of these runs that include thousands of feet of elevation?
Not really. I mean, I think again, early on, I had friends because I knew the race director that I did Run Rabbit Run and Steamboat. And so they would try to help me verbally, how to run downhill. But for someone like me, I need someone side by side me running with me. I need a running coach who can dominate on, knows a lot more about downhill running technique. Just like I help people with technique on the deck, I need someone with me to help me with my running technique on trails with rocks and roots. And it's more technical to help me with the technique. So it was, for the most part, the friends that I knew early on were just mileage based, run a lot of mileage. And, this day and age, it seems like all the ultra running podcasts that I follow now that weren't available back then, it's all about not necessarily the mileage. It's about if you're going to run an event like I just did with 7,000 feet of elevation gain, then your goal is to run as much elevation gain as you can over the course of the week. So if
Mm.
you're going to run 7,000 feet in one race, try to target at least 7,000 during the week, if not more. And so it's less about mileage and more about the terrain and the elevation, if that's something that you're going to do.
Yeah, it makes me very curious. There's some, like for example, when I've done 3 Xterras, and I was not prepared whatsoever for the trail running, and
Hmm.
it was, and these are like almost like sprint distances, but the
Right.
time you're out in the course is more like an Olympic, just because you're going slower, and
Right.
yeah, it's twice the length, the time, but the distance is shorter, and I was really surprised on how hard it was, the power output that I needed to put in the bike. And then the running was just like frustrating because, you have some accelerations, you have some decelerations. So when you're doing ultras, now I'm getting really curious about this,
Uh-huh.
are there, not standard, but what can you expect in terms of how long you will be in an upward climb? Because I know it all varies. But
Hmm.
like if you're practicing, you do intervals. Like, okay, I'm gonna do an interval on the flat road, but I'm gonna go hard for 30 seconds, or I'm gonna go hard for a quarter mile or half a mile, and then
Hmm.
I'm gonna get back to normal speed. How do you plan for, on average, these inclines are gonna be a quarter mile or a mile of straight up walking, and then I can go down for you? How can you plan for the unknown of the terrain?
Well, that you can look at the course profile
Okay,
before
yeah,
the
yeah,
event. And
yeah.
so, this specific course profile was, again, the 3 to 4 miles up and then down.
You taking notes with you, like, or people have like little wristbands that go, okay, now I know the next 3 miles I can prepare to go uphill.
Um, you
I
just
would do
know,
that.
you know, because you looked at the course terrain before.
Okay.
And so, and you have your Garmin and you have your GPS telling you. And I had mine mostly on elevation. I was like, okay, I know I can go the distance. I just want to know when I'm getting the elevation. When did I get hit 1,000 feet? When did I hit 2,000, 3,000? Because I knew I would have to average around 500 feet of gain per mile. No, per 2 miles, per 2 miles. So in the limited training that I did between Kona and this event,
Mm-hmm.
I would go out to, we have a mountain called Kennesaw Mountain, and it's 1 mile up and one
Mm-hmm.
mile down, which is 500 feet. So I would do 1 mile up, 1 mile down, 1 mile up, 1 mile down, get in 4 miles, get in 1,000 feet of elevation, and I'd get an approximate time of how long they'd take me. If I was on the road, I was faster than if I did that on the trail because we had both options. And I didn't have enough time to actually go to the northern Georgia mountains and do 3 miles up, 3 miles down. That's what I need to start doing in the future. And so one day I got on the treadmill and I put it between 10 and 15% incline, and I just walked at 3 miles an hour to get in
Okay.
3 miles and to get in the elevation. And then I typed in a calculator online because I wanted to know, walking 3 miles an hour at 10% incline on a treadmill, how much elevation gain would that theoretically get me outside?
Ah.
And so, yeah, you just kind of know by looking at the course profile what you're about to encounter. Now, I'm someone generally who doesn't really pay attention to many course profiles when it comes to triathlon, but for ultra running, I do because it's still like it's new to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
still something that I'm learning from, and I want to train properly for it because there's not really many, there's no specific plan for the Sky Valley 50K that I could have followed online. Hey, this is how you train for the 50K. But the race director did a good job with videos. He's from Atlanta, and so he actually put out a video. He was very much into wanting all the newbies to be successful. So he was giving us advice about how to train.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, if you can't train outside, this is what you should do on the treadmill and or the step mill, and this is, why you should do this and that. And he was really good about giving us some good tips and tricks.
Okay, that makes more sense. I think if you, for the triathletes, the bike course
Uh-huh.
profile and knowing, I think if you a person, and this has helped me in Coeur d'Alene because this is my backyard, half and full, is that if I know where I can hit it the hardest and be efficient versus, all right, now I have to suck it up and deal with this incline, I can be faster than the other person who's not prepared, who's not unfamiliar with, okay, this is a mile and a half climb. If they go
Uh-huh.
too hard, I'll catch you later because I know that you're going to burn yourself out. But if I pace it correctly in the certain areas, and you can do the same thing with looking at these profiles. And that's why I asked you about the wristband, for example, because that's what I did for my last, the
Uh-huh.
half in Coeur d'Alene. It's like, okay, I know this elevation for 1.8 miles is going to be that kind of a climb. And then I got 2.3 miles of flat or decline. So there I can make up, or I can really get into an air position, or I can catch up on, my legs or hydration,
Mhm.
something like that. And go ahead.
No, and that's a really good point. So most ultra runners dominate on the descents. All my races that I've done up at this point, I dominate on the uphills.
Hmm.
And even for me, the times that I've actually trained for these events and my personal downhill has gotten better, I'm still pretty weak on the downhills compared to most ultra runners. So the ultra running is all about hiking up and running
Hiking.
down. And so
Uh-huh.
I had to train my body to not run uphill. I like running uphill, but I had to train my muscles to be able to hike uphill over the last few years of me doing ultras, intermittently. And so trail runners know as soon as they get over the crest of this 3 mile climb, they're going to, haul downhill. Then they're
Hmm.
going to stop at the aid station and then they're going to hike again. They're going to have to hike again and dominate on the downhill. Now, in this particular event, when I got to the last aid station, let's say mile, it was like between 22 and 24. Again, me and this guy were going back and forth. All of a sudden, we're on a dirt road. And he told me we did this like mile or two up this dirt road. And I'm like, oh, I didn't know there was going to be a dirt road. This is awesome. This is my strength. And I took off. And then we got back on the trail and he caught up to me and he goes, I saw what you did. He goes, you're still really strong on the uphills. And he explained to me because he had done it before, what the last 6 miles of the course were going to be like, which I didn't know, which I was glad he told me because he told me that there was going to be another uphill on the road and the final 3 miles were downhill on the road. And so for me, knowing that, I'm like, okay, all those people that I just crushed uphill, they're not going to pass me because I'm going to crush them running downhill on the road because it's not a trail. And so
Hmm.
that helped me mentally know we all have our strengths and weaknesses. And my strength happened to come the last 8 miles of this course, which I wouldn't have known unless he told me. So I was really relieved that he told me about the road coming up.
I'm thinking about that with, 10 days to go or so. I'm looking at the elevation gain at Ironman, Arizona. And you think
Mhm.
Arizona is going to be pretty flat. It is for the most part. The elevation gain is 2,500 feet. It's 3 loops. So it's going to be 800 feet or so per loop. And knowing that the first half of it is a gradual incline, even though it doesn't seem like it because you're out there in the flat course of Arizona. But the
Right.
second half of it coming back, that's where, if anyone's happened to be listening to this who's doing Arizona, that's where you can strategically go, all right, stay steady on the way out. Maybe you're going to get some speed on the way back. Use that speed to relax or just high cadence so your legs don't get burned out. Don't push too hard or use the strength for your out and then cruise on the way back or whatever you want to do, but know what it is. That way you can plan accordingly and knowing what your strengths are and how you can plan the day. So that's one of the things I think about too is like, okay, I see this as a climbing out and all the way smooth going back. So if I want to push it, I can expect my speeds and I will know my speeds will be faster in the way back. So it won't be a surprise. It won't be like, well, I'm going
Yeah.
so much faster. I hope I'm not burning myself out. Okay, I know the course. I know I'm not burning myself out. High cadence, smooth. On the way
Th-
out, though, gradual, stay within myself,
Yeah.
then go, on the way back.
And that's really helpful because sometimes you're on a false flat,
Hmm.
meaning you think it's flat, but you're really going up a slight incline, but it could be really frustrating because it's harder than you think it should be
Yeah,
because it's a false flat. And so
yeah. Why?
knowing you're going up that false flat helps you realize, well, I should be a little bit slower because I'm still going uphill. Now, one little thing about Arizona, and this is when I did it in April. This is before they changed it to the November course. The weather's different. The first year I did it, we had a tailwind on the way out. So Beeline Highway is where the climb is. we had a tailwind going up, and I didn't know it the first loop. Well, after the first loop, I figured it out. And we had this horrific headwind while we were supposed to be going downhill fast. We had a
Yeah.
headwind, and I remember going like 10 miles an hour into this headwind, and it was so hard.
Yeah.
And it was not expected. I didn't know the wind conditions. But one good thing, to me, a benefit of a looped course is once you get a feel of the wind and the weather the first loop, you're a little bit more prepared for the last part of the course.
Yeah. Back to the ultra and how this can possibly apply to triathlon for their endurance athletes, our multi-sport athletes here, is an article that you share with me about people using other pieces of equipment to prepare themselves or complement their training. For example, an elliptical or maybe a Stairmaster or stair. What do you call it? A stair?
I call it a step mill. So the step
mill.
mill is the revolving stairs.
Yes.
And then the Stairmasters, you just go up and down with your feet. But the step mill is actually revolving stairs, and it mimics, if you have like the right speed, it mimics like hiking uphill.
Yeah, and just how important that can be for those people who don't want to put the extra pounding or stress on their joints, but how this can almost enhance and I want to say not fortify, but
to me,
make their performance.
To me, it creates a bigger engine. It creates a bigger aerobic engine, because ultra running, as well as ultra triathlon, it's all about having a big engine, strength. It's all about strength endurance. And so someone like me, again, back in the days, even when I trained for triathlon, before I started ultra running, I would take advantage of, if I was injured, I put a lot of time on the elliptical. And again, this is way back in the 90s before there was really any coaching going on or really articles. There was no internet. So I just kind of did my own thing. And I spent a lot of time keeping up with my aerobic endurance when I couldn't run by doing the elliptical I used a heart rate monitor. So I would set it on a cadence that would mimic my run cadence, and I would try to, get my heart rate up. And then I also complemented that with aqua jogging, because aqua jogging helped me maintain more of a running motion, a running form, running style. So a combination of the two were really beneficial for me. And when it comes to like ultra running and cross training for an elevation course, that step mill definitely is going to be dominant, because it really gets your quads. And it's the quads that you're going to use most of. You're going to use your quads going up as well as going downhill. And it's the eccentric contractions going downhill, or the concentric contractions going downhill, that really is going to trash your legs if you're not ready for it. So definitely cross training with even biking, I think, gets that engine, your engine really high, that aerobic engine high, that makes the ultra distances, but you're better prepared for them.
This question here, or a topic that we have on our list today, I know this is just one ultra running topic we've got, first half hour of the program, is they're asking about Ironman Arizona being their first Ironman, and they're asking some mental strategies that you use to stay present and focused throughout an Ironman. So this can relate to both of us, Wendy, you and me. I can talk about my Ironman, how to stay present and focused through what I'm preparing for actively. And for you, throughout your multiple Ironmans in the past, how have you evolved your ability to stay present and focused? Let's begin with you.
Well, I think it's a great question. And all these questions we get, it reminds me of my early days when I started triathlon. This specific question reminds me of when I did Ironman Texas in 2017. And Ironman Texas back then, it was kind of a boring course. It was on a highway. We had to do these 2 loops on the highway. And what I recognized as I was preparing for this event is I do tend to drift off. My mind drifts during the 112-mile bike portion. And it either drifts because I start off too hard, or it drifts because I need fuel, I need sugars. But for whatever reason, I caught myself drifting. And so specifically for Texas, by then I had a power meter. And so I was totally putting 100% focus on my power during that course. And that kind of helped go get through it. Because
Mm-hmm.
there was one section, probably between mile 50 and 60, that I noticed my power was getting low. And I'm like, oh gosh, okay, I gotta focus. I gotta readjust.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, no, you gotta eat. You gotta eat your pretzels, eat your chips, eat whatever you have. And that's gonna help my mind get more present, which is actually very helpful. And so this moves on to most of my Ironmans. I am 100% not only focused on my pace, power, effort, whatever I decide I'm going to use for that day. I'm really focused on my nutrition. Every 15 minutes, did I drink? Did I eat? An hour goes by. How much did I eat? How much did I drink? And so putting my focus on nutrition makes it go by quicker too. And then again, going back to your why, when you have those moments of, maybe the weather's horrible, the wind, the rain, whatever reason, and you're just like, I don't feel good, I'm not having a good day,
Mm-hmm.
always going back to your why and your purpose and your reason. I had some of those moments in that recent 50K where I'm like, oh gosh, I'm running downhill. I'm not prepared for this. Why am I here? Well, I enjoy, this is all a training day. I really enjoy nature, even though it was raining all day. I'm like, I really enjoy being out here. This is all another experience to use, to learn from, and use in the future.
Making progress. If you're not making progress, then you're just the life is passing you by,
Right.
right? You're standing
Right.
still, and you're learning. You're trying new things. I saw a quote, or maybe it was a post somewhere about someone who was older, and I think it was just in life. Like, why are you still doing this? Because I'm making progress, because I'm seeking progress.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, I'm 60 years old. Would someone say, I'm 60, 70? Why do you keep doing these things? Because I'm aiming for progress. If I don't progress, then game's over in a way. What am I doing? Am I just content? And then in contentment, it's over. I mean,
I like
that's,
that.
yeah. So, yeah, yeah, progress. And that's what it's so inspiring, I hope, for our listeners and our viewers that, you at your age, not like you're old, but at your age, you're continuing to try new things and pushing yourself. And what you just said there, it's the experience. There's other things that you're trying to find and seek out and achieve and absorb. And it's fun. It's fun to see, like, okay, why not? Let me. I'm not done just because I'm done with this part of this chapter of my multi-sport life, or I'm closing the chapter on this one. Why not just continue trying something different? This might be a good one to segue into this person's question here. Where was it? It was about swimming. A newbie. Is this the one? No, it's about workouts. I lost where it is. Oh, Melinda, I have an off-season question for you. I'm hoping to spend a few months focusing on swimming and strength this winter. I can't help but feel like I need to also run and bike to keep my discipline-specific fitness up. But this is where it is. But I feel like I end up essentially doing a regular tri plan with a slight emphasis towards swimming instead of really focusing on the swim itself because I'm adding the bike and the run in my off season. Am I worrying too much about maintaining fitness in the other areas?
Yes, you are worrying too much about maintaining areas of fitness or maintaining fitness in the other areas. And at the same time, you can maintain your fitness by cross training, by doing other things. What I would suggest for you is yes, you want to focus on your swim, the off season, out of season, whatever you want to call it, is a perfect opportunity to focus on that because it keeps you inside. Most people are more indoors during the fall and winter, and that's
Mm-hmm.
usually when most people's out of season is. And you're going to, sounds like swimming's your weak link, so you're going to make your weaker sport, step ups to match more your strengths. But that doesn't mean you can't ride or run. What it means is if it's a nice day, go out for a run or go out and bike.
Mm-hmm.
But lose the intensity, lose the details, and don't follow any plan other than I'm going to go pedal my bike outside today, or I'm just going to go for a run. I don't know how long or how far, unless you have this time limit. You can run between 12 and 1 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not following the details of I have to do 400 repeats at zone 4 during this run. You're just going out for a run. If you want to run hard, you make it a fartlek where you do some speed play. You run hard to the stop sign, then you run easy, and then you run hard for that block, and then you run easy, or you run hard uphill, or you run hard downhill. And that's the speed play part of it. So definitely it's an okay to lose a little bit of fitness in the off season. That's the point. You don't always want to maintain peak fitness, and the off season happens after you just did the peak race of your season.
Mm-hmm.
And so, don't put so much stress on yourself that you can't do multi-sport. That's one reason we created a multi-sport out of season plan on Training Peaks, because that's something that some people want to do, especially someone who may be new to the sport. If you're you're a year or two into the sport, your off season is going to look something different than mine, who's been in the sport for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Usually the newer athlete will do more of a multi-sport type of off season because they just started, and they will benefit from that experience of still multi-sport training in the off season. Just the duration and the intensity is going to look a little different.
Yeah, I think if you are a newbie, it's you're almost playing catch up. So it's not that there's an off season for you. There's just a training. You just got to train. You got to catch up to what you haven't done before, and you're
Right.
not. I don't know if you're gonna, as a newbie, you will achieve peak fitness because you're catching up. You're entering the sport, so your peak fitness. You may get to a peak of what your fitness can be based on your
Right.
experience, but why not just train and train and train and work on some things here and there and build slowly, incrementally over the next, 18 to 36 months, get somewhere, and then assess, well, what's my future in the sport? Where are my fitness potential limits?
Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe a newbie can, you're overthinking a little bit, Melinda. Just go. This is not, is she a newbie? Can't remember if she's a newbie. Someone else had a newbie question, but just
No,
go.
but I think it's a very confusing time especially for, beginner and intermediate multi-sport athletes. The off season, out of season, fall, winter, it could be a very confusing time because there's just so much information, overwhelming information out there on the internet and in
Mm-hmm.
social media groups. And it really just depends on the person and their experience and what their goals are and whys. And, just be sure to not force yourself to do anything and have fun with it, and back off when you need to, because it's the time of year to be very flexible with your training schedule. But it's not the time of year that you take completely off either. You just want to make it a little bit different and a little bit more fun. Like for me, when I go outside and ride, I'm going to be on my mountain bike, and I'm going to be on the road on
Mm-hmm.
my mountain bike, just because my goal is just to get outside. It's
Mm-hmm.
70 degrees. I'm going to go ride my bike
Mm-hmm.
with no other intention other than to enjoy the weather.
Because it's so fresh in my head, the question about the mental strategies to stay present and focused throughout an Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
My answer to that is I kind of reverse engineer the plan of the day. I need to have something left in the tank, and knowing that in the Ironman, for a newbie or anybody's, that's going to be the hardest part of it. So if I can save as much as possible pre-run, I want to put myself in the best position to run as strong as possible, and knowing that I'll never be able to run the marathon on fresh legs like I would be in training. So I'm gonna have to pay some taxes before I get there. So knowing that, all right, swim for me, I break it down. I'm new to it. I break down the swim. In this case, it's kind of a circular loop here. It's kind of a little left, up, and then down and back. They changed it a little bit here. So I know that, all right, I'm gonna cut this in half. Where do I need to be? Where should I be when I hit that turnaround? And I'll look at the buoys and stuff, and I'll count buoys before the race. All right, I want to be at a certain time, hopefully, when I get to this point, and then build into a rhythm. I have some of my own swim issues, but build into a rhythm of speed, get there and stay there. And it's all about just like, okay, relax. This is not the race. This is not the race at all. The race is actually after the bike. But the bike, for me, as I'm thinking about for this race, is maintaining and staying within a range and not extending myself.
Mm-hmm.
How can I be disciplined in not going too hard, staying within that, because I want to have legs to run, and that's my race, is to run. If I can do that, because my strength is my bike, run is my second, and swim is is fine. I'm only going to be so fast because I'm only going to work so hard at swimming. I just know
Right.
myself. This is my speed. I'm okay with it because I can make it up in the bike, and that's my area of greatest growth. And then run. I'm tired. I'm getting ready to do a marathon after 112 miles of cycling at 19 for me, 19 miles per hour, for example. Hopefully that I can get under a certain time and then look at the clock and go, all right, got two, is it two loops I say? Two loops here. They've changed the run course, two loops. And I've already seen the map. All right, let's break this out, these 2 to 4 mile blocks, go out, have a time in mind, have a pace in mind. And mentally, and this helped me 9 years ago, Roger, our friend, said, know that you're going out for a 4 hour run. Just know that in the beginning to take away the pressure of, I have to go run right now.
Mm-hmm.
Running versus doing a marathon is different. You know, I'm not going to go run a marathon. I'm not going to go race a marathon. I'm going to go do a marathon.
Right.
I'm going to survive a marathon. So in my head, if you're going to talk about, this is your first first Ironman in Arizona, know you're going to be out there for a while. There's no rush. Just, break it up. And you would say, maybe do it in 4 mile increments or 6 mile increments. In training, I think, all right, every hour I should be around 6-7 miles. In training, that's where I'd be probably. So I look at the clock at 7 miles, at 1 hour. Where am I? All right. Possibly, can I multiply that by 4? Maybe not, but let's just kind of cruise the next. This is me thinking, all right, I'm going to do my first hour, look at the clock. Second hour, did I negative split that second hour or was I steady? Steady's fine. Now, the third hour, can I go a little bit faster? What do I have in the tank? And after that third hour, now I'm left with an hour and change. What can I do? What's available? Where am I nutrition-wise? Where are my muscles? Where are my hips and joints? How are they? But I know, as I did last time, little goosebumps going on right now, that I will get emotional because I'm going to lean on my why during my most difficult times. And my whys are going to be able to see my son and daughter at the end. More my son because he's more aware of what I'm doing. And that's my why. And I'll get like a little choked up. I'll think, all right, even though they don't remember, I remember, because they're so young, 4.5 and 3. I know what I'm doing and it means more to me. And I can use that emotional fuel to overpower the mind to say, when the body's saying, oh, you're done, bud, you're done. No, I'm not done. I'm not done until I cross. And I'm going to cross strong. And I've got 2 poses, Wendy. I got 2 poses I'm ready to do. And that's weird. These little motivations too are in mind. I want to make sure that there's no one behind me when I pose because I don't want to be in someone's picture and I want someone else to be in my picture. I got 2 poses in mind. One's for me and one's for my son. It's kind of weird. I'm looking forward to and doing these poses, and then I'll have the photos at the end, and he'll get a kick out of it when he gets older.
That's awesome. Something that you reminded me of, 2 things. During my 50K, I personally ahead of time also broke it up into 4 8-mile runs. I've done 8-mile runs plenty of times. If I can just do an 8-mile run 4 times, I'm going to be fine. But there was a guy ahead of me, and he did pretty good for the first half, and then he faded. But I heard him talking to his friend, and he said, he's complaining his training's been really limited the last couple months, and he's done a couple 8-mile runs. And so I yelled. I was a little bit behind him, but I yelled. I said, good. Just do 4 of your 8-mile runs that you've done in training. And they both appreciated it. They both kind of laughed. They're like, you're right. It's just break this up into 4 8-mile runs. And over the course of a marathon, you can do the same thing. You can break up a marathon and do, 4 10Ks plus a 2K. Yeah. You've done plenty of 10K runs in training, so just do 4 10K runs plus a 2K or something like that. You've done plenty of 5-mile runs, 10-mile runs, however you want to break it up. I think it's important, especially an Ironman marathon, to break it up into shorter segments, shorter objectives, small-term goals to lead to the finish line is very helpful to keep you very present in what you're doing. Also, again, the goal is to get to the finish line as quickly as possible. So if you end up being a run walker, whether you intend to be or not, it's probably going to happen. Come up with a strategy. I'm going to walk I'm going to walk the 8 stations, or I'm going to walk a minute, run a minute, walk a minute, run a minute. I'm going to walk the inclines always run the declines because you're going to be faster that way. So there's a lot of strategies you can use to get through a marathon or again, an ultra distance run event.
Last podcast, I think it was maybe after our podcast, you and I spoke about my next upcoming long run, and I was debating
Uh-huh.
whether I was going to do a 12 or I was going to do an 18 or possibly 20. And then
Uh-huh.
we discussed, how I'd approach it. Well, I ended up doing a 14, and I went out and with your advice, 'cause it was all going to be feel. I didn't know what I was going to do when I
Uh-huh.
left the house. I didn't know my route. I didn't want to know my route. I wanted to make decisions at intersections or at crossroads, literally and figuratively. So I went out and I just went. And I thought, okay, the first 2 miles, I'm not feeling it yet. So I just went out nice and casual. The first 2 miles were casual. And then I kind of picked up the pace a little bit and I took a left turn. And instead of staying close to home, I just kept going. I went further away. And in my mind, I'm going, all right, if I hit 4 miles, that means I'm 8 miles. If I go five
Uh-huh.
miles, I'm 10 miles. And then I started finding different loops. And I started visualizing these spots where I can make the biggest loop possible without having to repeat. Because the closer I get to home, I want to stay home and not do some, back and forth in front of my house. And which I ended up having to do because I still was like a mile and a half short of 14, but I wasn't quite at 13. And I definitely want to do 13. Just like I need to know, what the 2 hours feels like again and I wanted to do tax the body. Body
Mhm.
needed to feel that soreness or that fatigue. And I knew that 10 miles was definitely not going to be enough to feel because my longest run's only been 18. So I need to do that. I have to do 12. Got to do 13. Let's go 14 because I remember, somewhere on my board I had 14 as in a mindset. Let's do a
Uh-huh.
14. So I ended up doing 14, but the first two were somewhat slow because I was still figuring things out. And then this is something I've experienced recently, and I wonder if you feel the same way in some of your marathon runs. Is I got into not one of those flow states, but some kind of zone where not that I was sleepy, but I was just running, and I didn't feel like I was doing anything, but I was still going at my pace. I was
Mhm.
still running the pace that I was concurrently at my fastest average pace, but I was not not that I wasn't present, but it was like I was just there and nothing bothered me. It was really weird that I was unconsciously running. Does that sound have you been that
No,
place
I think
before?
I think that's part of why we do what we do. I think that's a good feeling to accomplish and a good feeling to get. I think, as we train for more endurance type events, it takes our bodies a while to warm up.
Hmm.
And we're just not someone who's just going to go out the door and start running at a specific race pace. And so the fact that took you 2 miles to just kind of casually kind of get into it,
Hmm.
and then you were into it, that tells me you were enjoying going for a run. You were really
Well,
enjoying the experience that you had because you weren't like, you didn't have your focus on your watch or the route
no,
or
no,
the
I just
mileage.
went.
You were just
Yeah.
running to run.
And because of my volume is not where it should be, but because I've had some, anything's over 10, 12s is the area that I'm shooting for. Anywhere in the 5 and 6 is easy because I've built up to that point. So
Right.
in these 6 to 9 mile ranges, it becomes very easy. And I think that's maybe where these experiences are coming in most between 6 and 8 or 9 or 10 miles. Like, oh, this is so easy because I've
Right.
been here and it's like, not boring, but it's effortless,
For sure. Yeah.
and that felt good. I don't know if it does that must just come with the volume you put in. It's like, oh, in this stretch here, I'm kind of going through the motions. It doesn't hurt. It's not hard. I'm just getting past these miles, and they're going by. I'm not saying they go by fast, but they're going by without thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. Like 10 miles used to be a long run for me, 10
Mhm.
miles. But I've done so many 10-mile runs and beyond that 10 miles is kind of just an everyday distance. Not
Yeah,
right
just part
now,
of
but when I'm
it.
training for ultra, it's 10 miles becomes more of your kind of daily distance,
Yeah,
8
yeah,
to 10 miles. And then you want to get that feeling of you're exceeding your mileage, or you're getting that dead lake feeling that you want to get. And sometimes, oh my gosh, I have to get to 16 to 20 miles to feel that,
yeah,
because 16 miles kind of is a piece of cake. When I got to 16 miles in the 30K, I'm like, oh, this isn't bad. 16 miles on a trail took me 4 hours. I'm feeling 3 hours and 45 minutes. I'm feeling pretty good. And I just ran 16 miles. It wasn't that bad. It's because I've done extended and done so many ultra distances that those long runs that used to be long aren't so long anymore.
And this is something I'll have to remind myself. And it was at Ironman Arizona, of all places, in 9 years ago, is
Hmm.
that we were, I think, maybe a couple of miles away from the finish line. And I was running up on a lady who was running, and she was saying like something about I still have, and then X amount of miles to go. That's what it was. I
Uh-huh.
still have so many, we still have so many miles to go. And I said, and in the moment I said, but look how many miles we've already gone.
Right.
And in that little switch, even for myself at the moment, it was like, yeah, but look how far we've come so far.
Right.
And we only have that many to go.
Hmm.
And this just going back to the person who asked the question as this being their first Ironman is if you can remind yourself after the bike is over, for example, not that you have a marathon to run, but look how far you've come already. You've gone
Hmm.
over 114 miles. You've moved your body 114 miles. You only got 26 to go. And then when you get halfway and it's like, oh my God, I still have a half marathon. You've already accomplished a half marathon.
Right.
You only have a half marathon to go on the day. And then you can relax. It's almost over.
That's
And
great.
yeah, that's one of those things too, is like the pain's going to be over soon. It's going to be over soon. I don't want to regret this moment of like slowing down. That's one of my little mental things too, is like, oh, I don't want to push because in a matter of an hour or a matter of so many miles, it's going to be over. And then, well, I said I could have pushed in this section. Let's see what happens. Let me just
Right.
push because it's going to be over real soon. And I can't feel it. To be in that moment, I mean, I'm just excited about it, Wendy.
I
To
love
be
it.
in
It's
this
great.
moment of pain or this moment of accomplishment in it before it's over. It's hard to get there. And I know for me, it's all these months, all these hours of putting in, and I'm not going to quit. Obviously, I'm not going to quit now, but putting all this time in, I want to be in that moment as long as possible. But every second clicks away and it's almost over. But I want to be in it as long as possible
Hmm.
because I've earned it. And I think that's the person who's doing the Ironman the first time. You've earned being here. You've earned this feeling that you can only experience while you're in it, and it's
Hmm.
over. And it's like, and that's why people sign up the next day. It's like, crap,
Right.
I want to feel
Right.
this again. It's overwhelming to get here, but I love this feeling now.
Uh-huh.
I'm looking forward to that part of it. And no matter how fit I am or the lack of fitness I have, you can always power through it. And I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm excited to feel that feeling, as you can tell.
It's a great feeling. I understand.
Yeah, I know you do. You've done it 21 times at the full distance and countless ultras. I know you know. So people listening, you'll know if you have tell someone, and I guess everyone sees it on the faces of the finishers, right? In those final miles,
Hmm.
you know. Wow, this is a long podcast, and we've covered only like two or three topics.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot we covered in those two or three topics, though.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. Well, this is gonna be the last one because I leave next week, Tuesday. So I'm not going to podcast from Arizona because I'm not going to have my equipment. It's just kind of it's a big family vacation, by the way. We've got 10 people going down,
Nice.
not just it's not for me. It just happens to be, hey, Dave's doing the
Uh,
Ironman in Arizona. Let's go down and do a vacation at the same time, and maybe we'll go watch.
nice.
Only a few people are going to watch.
One year,
Anyhow,
one year I went. I think it was my first one that I did in November on
mhm,
07. My husband played golf. It was great while I was on the bike course, and I was
yeah,
so happy he was occupied and not waiting for me per
yeah.
se. He was out there playing golf. As long as I told him, as long as you're there at the finish line, I don't care what you do all day. I just want you there at the finish line. And so
Ah,
if your friends and family like to play golf, there's a lot of good golf courses around.
yeah, that's one thing I do look forward to, and I've already told my wife this is with a bike course. There's three loops. So at the hot corner down by the transition, they
Mhm.
can be there, and it's 38 miles, 39 miles, something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah, about 38 miles or 37 miles on the loop. So I know how long it'll take me approximately. She'll know how long it'll take me, so she can plan to be there at a certain point. I guess you can also track the Ironman
Right,
tracker,
right, exactly.
but in those 10 seconds or 20 seconds that I can see here as I come down and do the loop, I look forward to that. That's kind of like there's a little bit of the whys. I want to get to the turnaround so I can say hi.
Yeah.
I want to get to the turnaround and just give her a look like here I am, or just give a 5-second update. Doing good, feeling good, strong, or like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing on the run, which is it's gonna be out 1, 2. There's gonna be a couple of spots where they can go, but I want to see them. And then same thing with the Coeur d'Alene half. Even though it was a half, there was a couple loops. It's like, unfortunately, I didn't see her on the loop because the timing of it, but I saw him at the very finish, and it was like, that's what I was looking for. And it was a little bit of a let down. And I was by myself. I don't see somebody I know, but if I do know they're there, that can be a little bit of a push.
Nice.
A little bit of a push. All right, my friend. Yeah. That's it for today. That's it for this 380 episodes.
Yeah, have a great race next week. We'll be tracking you.
I'll talk to you next week anyway, just to I someone who doesn't talk me out of it. I've already boxed up my bike because I'm going to be prepared as possible. Because I haven't boxed my bike up since 2016. And yesterday when I was disassembling the aero bars, one of the bolts got stripped, and I couldn't undo it, and it needs to be undone to fit in the bike box. So I had to make a run to the bike shop. Luckily, did it yesterday. Otherwise, I would have been screwed if I would have waited the day before because it's stripped. That's how long it's been. And it was too tight. I stripped it.
Wow.
And I had to make another adjustment too. But yeah, just don't want to be stressed on this part of it with traveling with a bike box. Okay, I'll talk to you next week.
Cool.
For Wendy Mader, I'm Dave Erickson. Thanks so much for listening this epic podcast today. We hope you have a great week of racing, training, or recovery. I got lots to talk about in a couple of weeks when we see you next time. Until then, adios.
Adios.